Hi! In this short video, we're going to cover all of the markings you'll encounter at an airport that designate runways and what they mean. Knowing what each of these markings mean at an airport can help you improve your landings and approaches. It's a pretty dry topic, so I'll keep it as brief as possible. For our first example here, I'm using O'Hare Airport in Chicago since it offers runways with the most amount of markings. All runway markings are painted in white, while taxiways are painted with yellow. It should be noted that ground vehicle traffic areas are also painted white and are generally shared with aircraft. Runways are designed to endure a specific weight limit. In the case of an international airport such as O'Hare, these runways can support weights upwards of 1,250,000 pounds, and taxiways, aprons, and ramps can typically support up to 1 million pounds. As such, airports typically will mark areas adjacent to these areas with yellow lines like these to indicate that they're not designed to endure the weight of an aircraft, and as such, no aircraft are permitted to cross into these areas. Before the actual start of the runway, we have these yellow arrow markings called chevrons. They indicate an area that's aligned with the runway but are not for use by aircraft as they cannot support the weight. They just provide a visual indicator of the approaching runway threshold. They're also referred to as a blast pad. These white lines that have arrowheads on them and lead up to these additional arrow markings here are referred to as displaced threshold markings. Here we have the white side stripes that run the duration of the runway. This set of white stripes here is the runway threshold marker. The number of stripes indicates the width of the runway. Here at O'Hare, all of the runways are the same width and are designated with 12 stripes that indicate a width of 150 feet. At LAX, we have 12 stripes on the right-hand runway for a width of 150 feet, while the left-hand runway has 16 stripes, indicating a width of 200 feet. 4 stripes would indicate a width of 60 feet, while 6 stripes indicate 75 feet, and 8 indicate 100 feet. Smaller airports like this non-towered one in Santa Paula, California may lack any threshold marker whatsoever, and you should check the airport chart to find out if it's wide enough for your aircraft. Moving past the threshold marker, we have the runway designator that includes the runway number. Unlike taxiways, runways always use a numeric designation with an optional letter to denote position. Examples are L for left, C for center, and R for right, or nothing in the case of a single runway. Runways can also have their designations written on the ground at taxiway thresholds like this. Additionally, there can be signs that have the runway designation like this. Unlike runways, taxiways typically lack ground designations, and their designations are only found on signs that are located around the airfield like these. At smaller airports, the taxiways may have no written designations whatsoever, and the pilot must rely on the airport chart to determine the name designations like this. The runway number corresponds to the magnetic compass heading that the aircraft is facing. They're rounded up and shortened to the first 2 digits. So in our case here, the aircraft has a heading of 280 degrees. They're always referred to with the letter designation where appropriate, such as 28 right or 28 left. If there are more than 3 runways parallel to each other, airports will generally increase the number for the runways past 3. If we go to the other end of the runway, we'll see that the runway numbers and letter designations change. The runway numerical designation is now the magnetic compass heading that is 180 degrees opposite of the other end. 100 degrees in our example here. Since the designations are swapped, since the runways are now the opposite of what they were at the other end, we now have 10 left or 10 right. Following the runway designation marker, we have the centerline marker that consists of this dash line that runs down the center of the runway. Each of these stripes and the space between them is about 200 feet. A common practice on approach in an aircraft like the 152 or 172 is to use the runway number as your aiming point. Once you get down to that point, you look out about 5 of the centerline segments down the runway as your new aiming point, and that gives you about 1,000 feet. Following this, we have the touchdown zone markings. These markings are for landing operations and are marked as a single set of 3 on each side of the center line. 2 sets each of markers that consist of 2 and 1 stripes on each side of the center line have 500 feet between them. These 2 rectangular markings past the 3-stripe touchdown zone markings are the aim point markings, which serve as a visual aim point for landing and are placed 1,000 feet past the runway's threshold. Our final runway marking that you can encounter, although not likely in the sim, is a large yellow X painted at both ends of the runway. This indicates a temporary runway closure. These are typically detailed in the local NOTAM or Notice to Airmen. Okay, that's it. In the next video for this series, I'll go over the taxiway markings if this video does well. If you like the video, please give it a like as that really helps, and until the next video, take care.